On the morning of January 13, 1995, a groundskeeper for the Jobs Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee, was doing his rounds around campus when he came across the carcass of what he believed to be a large, dead animal discarded in the bushes. But it was so badly massacred that from where he stood, he was unable to identify it. As the groundskeeper approached the corpse to bag it and trash it, he realized that it wasn't the body of a dead animal, but of a young woman. Her body bashed and slashed so violently that she was nearly decapitated. She was naked from the waist up, and carved on her chest was a pentagram. Investigations would soon lead to the identity of the young woman. Her name was Colleen Slemmer. She was 17 years old, and she was a student at the Jobs Corps. In recent years, news media has begun to reevaluate and deconstruct the Satanic Panic, a bout of mass hysteria that afflicted the United States for over a decade. But what if it wasn't just hysteria? What if some of it was true? Ritual Rewind brings you into the darkest corners of the 1980s, uncovering the crimes, conspiracies, and occult fears that shaped a generation. Tonight, we rewind it back to 1995 and dive into the murder of Colleen Slemmer. It's a tale of juvenile delinquency, familial abuse, and mental illness. Is it nature or nurture, or a combination of both? Tonight, it's the case of the devil and the delinquent. I'm your host, Drew, and you're listening to The Ritual Rewind.
Christa Pike is scheduled to be put to death by the state next September. Pike was sentenced to death in 1996 for the 1995 killing of Colleen Slemmer. Pike and her boyfriend, Tadaryl Shipp, were both convicted of Slemmer's murder after Slemmer was tortured, mutilated, and killed. Slemmer and Pike were taking part in a job training program here in Knoxville. Investigators say Pike, her boyfriend, Tadaryl Shipp, and friend, Shadala Peterson, lured Slemmer into Tyson Park on the night of January 12th. Once there, the couple then taunted and attacked Slemmer with a box cutter and small cleaver. Pike and Shipp carved pentagrams into Slemmer's chest and on her forehead. Pike then repeatedly hit Slemmer in the head with a chunk of asphalt until she was dead.
Christa Pike had a horrible childhood marked by violence, drugs, and sexual abuse, and it put her on a destructive path that would result in the brutal murder of Colleen Slemmer on January 12, 1995. And inarguable, her journey began well before she was even able to walk. Born prematurely in West Virginia in 1976, Christa was diagnosed with infant respiratory distress syndrome, a condition in which the lungs are not fully developed and the infant struggles to breathe and requires additional oxygen, and suffered from hip dysplasia, a condition in which the hip joints are abnormal and the balls of the thigh bones don't fit snugly into their sockets. Those with this condition can experience pain, limping, and reduced range of motion. And in addition to all of this, Christa was also afflicted with epilepsy, all of it before she even left the hospital, and it is believed to have been brought on by a severe case of fetal alcohol syndrome, though Christa's mother, Carissa, would deny ever drinking alcohol while pregnant with her daughter. And this was only the beginning of Christa's medical issues. When Christa was 14 months old, her doctor performed an electroencephalogram. The results showed an abnormal brain activity consistent with frontal temporal lobe damage. The frontal lobe is a portion of the brain that regulates impulse control. And impulse control would be something Christa would struggle with her entire life. But with proper medical and psychiatric care, many of these ailments could be overcome. Unfortunately for Christa, she grew up in extreme poverty and was neglected and rejected by those that should have cared for her the most. Family members would say that as an infant, Christa lived in literal filth and had to crawl through piles of dog shit scattered around the house. Her mother, Carissa, was an alcoholic and suffered from severe depression, and she attempted suicide when Christa was only 3 years old. She preoccupied herself with partying, her own appearance, and her latest boyfriend, of which there were many. Those men also inflicted a great deal of emotional and physical abuse onto Christa. One was even charged with assault for punching her in the face when she was just 8 years old. Christa's father, Glenn, wasn't any better. She still has scars on her back from his daily beatings, which he meted out 5 or 6 times a day. Eventually, he kicked her out of his home, instead choosing his new wife and new children over her. When Carissa's fourth husband indicated that he did not like children, Christa was then sent to live with her maternal grandmother and faced verbal abuse on a nearly daily basis. Her maternal grandfather operated a slaughterhouse and subjected Christa to the repeated skinning and carving of animals, and at least one of those she had become attached to and had named. When she was 9 years old, Christa moved back into her mother's home and was promptly raped by a neighbor. Her assailant, Claude Davis, shoved her into the bushes, inserted his fingers and sticks into her, and then had his dog lick her vagina while he held her down. And though the assault was reported to police, Davis only spent 2 weeks in jail. Not long after, Christa attempted suicide for the first time by overdosing on Tylenol. She was in 3rd grade. After being released from the hospital, Christa went to live with her paternal grandmother, Christa Pike. And according to Christa, it was the only person that ever showed her love and compassion. So it was absolutely devastating when Christa Pike succumbed to cancer only a few years later when Christa was 12 years old. This was a turning point for Christa, and her seemingly miserable existence only got worse. She returned home to her mother, but found no solace from her. She was physically and sexually assaulted by her mother's boyfriend, and Christa again attempted suicide. She then dropped out of school and began to abuse drugs and alcohol in a failed attempt to numb her volatile and painful emotions. When Christa was 17, she was raped for a second time, this time by a stranger. And as a result of these traumatic experiences, Christa would later be diagnosed with bipolar disorder and PTSD. Christa eventually received her GED and enrolled in the Job Corps in Knoxville, Tennessee, to study computer programming. What Christa didn't know was that she was trading one toxic environment for another. The Job Corps is a vocational training program for delinquent and low-income students, and though the Job Corps is marketed as a government-run residential program designed to help troubled teens gain job skills, the administrators tolerated violence and neglected the students. Students reportedly carried around razor blades and box cutters for their own protection. But for Christa, the Job Corps offered her a sense of structure that she'd never known. And it's there that she met Tadaryl Shipp and Colleen Slemmer. Tadaryl Shipp was 17 years old and came from a dysfunctional family. He had a history of behavioral issues and was a member of a gang known as the Gangsters' Disciples. The Gangsters' Disciples is largely an African-American street gang centered in Chicago and is linked to drug trafficking and murder. Christa quickly began a sexual relationship with Shipp. She considered him her protector and the first person to care about her since her grandmother's death, even though Shipp physically abused her on multiple occasions. It was Shipp that introduced Christa to the occult and devil worship. It became a defining feature of their relationship. Tadaryl Shipp called himself an underlord and was in possession of the Satanic Bible. Christa believed Shipp could make the clouds move and the sky open with crystals, and they often did satanic chants in their dorm rooms. And they even got corresponding tattoos. Shipp's said Baby Satan, and Christa's read Little Satan. Colleen Slemmer was the antithesis of Christa Pike. She was born on March 22, 1975, into a close-knit, loving family. Her parents were hardworking and prioritized family above all else. Colleen was always willing to put others before her, but she never felt like she fit in. Christa and Colleen's relationship was initially one of friendship, but as time passed, their interactions became increasingly strained. Christa became jealous of Slemmer and began to believe that Slemmer wanted to steal her boyfriend, Shipp. This idea was instigated when Shipp and Slemmer passed each other in the hallway and Slemmer waved and smiled at Shipp. Christa began to denigrate Slemmer whenever she would see her, calling her a whore and a bitch. Christa would later say that she and Slemmer had been having problems for some time, and would even claim to have awakened one night to find Slemmer standing over her with a box cutter. Christa claimed that she had not planned to kill Slemmer, but she had instead planned on only to fight Slemmer and let her know
to leave me the hell alone.
On the days leading up to the murder, Christa consulted with another classmate and friend, Shadola Peterson, and together they formed a plan to lure Slemmer to an abandoned steam mill in a secluded part of the campus. And on January 11th, 1995, the day before the murder, Christa told another student, Kim Ilio, that she intended to kill Colleen Slemmer
because she just felt mean.
Christa later admitted that she had not slept well for the 3 days prior to the murder and was in an excited state and was very irritable and angry. On the evening of January 12th, Christa approached Slemmer and asked for her to accompany her to Blockbuster Video and then share a bag of weed. Slemmer, after suffering weeks of verbal abuse, took this as some sort of peace offering to bury the hatchet and agreed to join Christa in the woods to smoke in hopes that this would end their feud. Christa led Slemmer deep into the woods where Shipp and Shadola waited. Immediately upon seeing the other two, Slemmer was nervous and wanted to leave. But Christa began to accuse Slemmer of trying to sleep with Shipp. Slemmer, of course, denied this, but it didn't matter. Christa was never going to believe her. Christa attacked Slemmer and kneed her in the face. While Slemmer was stunned, Christa pulled out a meat cleaver and slashed Slemmer's stomach. Shipp joined in and attacked her with a box cutter, slicing her across the chest. Christa knocked Slemmer to the ground and kicked her relentlessly. She slammed Slemmer's head against the concrete over and over again. Slemmer begged to know why they were doing this to her, and she was answered with only more blunt attacks. Slemmer tried to flee, but Shipp chased her down and held her to the ground until she stopped struggling. Christa then cut Slemmer's stomach with the box cutter as she screamed and screamed for her life. And in the violent chaos, Christa began to hear voices. They
Wanted a human sacrifice.
and Slemmer was it. Slemmer tried to run away again, but Christa chopped at Slemmer's back with the cleaver, and Slemmer hit the ground hard. According to Christa, Slemmer began to bargain for her life, begging Christa to just let her go. She promised to leave that night and walk home. She would never return to campus, not even to get her things. Christa told her to
Shut up, because it was harder to hurt someone when they're talking to you.
When Slemmer continued to beg for her life, Christa slit her throat. Christa could hear Slemmer breathing blood in and blood out. She could see her body twitching from spasms. But Christa continued the assault. The attack lasted nearly an hour, and Christa only quit because she got bored. And as a final act of degradation, Christa and Shipp stripped off Slemmer's top and carved a pentagram into her chest with the box cutter. Despite it all, Slemmer was still alive. Christa then grabbed a hunk of asphalt and hammered Slemmer's skull over and over and over again until she was dead. Shadola just watched. Christa then took a piece of Slemmer's skull as a souvenir of her violent act and returned back to their dorm. The next morning at breakfast, Christa bragged about the murder to anyone that would listen and showed them the bone that she had kept, adding that, yes,
She was eating breakfast with it.
she then pointed to the brown spots on her shoes and said,
That ain't mud on my shoes. That's blood.
no one reported Christa to the police. Christa appeared on the police's radar when she showed up at the crime scene later that afternoon and asked the police what was going on, giggling while she spoke.
It is therefore ordered that you shall be put to death by electrocution in the mode prescribed by law, and that you shall be transferred to the custody of the warden. And further, on the 12th day of January, 1997, your body shall be subjected to shock by a sufficient current of electricity. May God have mercy upon you.
Christa was arrested and quickly confessed to the murder. She was found guilty at trial and was sentenced to death by electrocution. And just after she was sentenced to die, she wrote a letter to Shipp. It said,
Hey love, I just want you to know how much I love you. I have 10 months left to live. Imagine that. I'd spend every moment with you if I could, baby. I want you to tell them you lied in your statement and go along with mine, okay? Please write me. I miss you so much. You see what I get for trying to be nice to that hoe? I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she died quick instead of letting her bleed to death, and they fucking fry me. Ain't that some shit? Please write to me and tell me what you're feeling. Also tell your lawyer if he wants me to testify for you, I will. Love you for the rest of my life, little devil.
Christa's defense team attempted to excuse her actions by stating that individuals with bipolar disorder often suffer from episodes of hypomania typified by racing thoughts and sleep deprivation, which produce extremely poor judgment. Her doctors added, during a manic period, a person has a lot of difficulty in controlling behavior because the mania manifests itself by making the person feel invulnerable and that they can do anything and don't have to confine their behavior to the limits of what is allowed by society. Shipp was charged with first-degree murder, but because of his age, he was only sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Shadola Peterson turned state witness and testified against Christa and Shipp. She was granted a plea deal and received a 6-year probationary sentence for her role in the murder. Christa's time in prison has not passed by quietly. In 2001, Christa attempted to murder another inmate, Patricia Jones, by strangling her with a shoelace. Jones was serving a life sentence for the murder of an 84-year-old Alberta Coker during a robbery at Coker's home in 1995. Patricia stabbed Coker 77 times so she could steal jewelry and corn, of which she traded for $50 worth of cocaine. And like Christa, Patricia Jones had arrived in Knoxville by way of the Job Corps. Christa was convicted of that attempted murder in 2004. And in 2012, Christa attempted an escape with the help of a former prison guard, Justin Helfin, and her love interest, Donald Coet. Coet and Christa had become romantically involved, as much as one could when separated by prison walls, when Coet started corresponding with Christa while in prison. The attempted escape was thwarted before any actions could take place. Christa would later say this in regards to the murder of Colleen Slemmer. Think back to the worst mistake you made as a reckless teenager. Well, mine happened to be huge, unforgettable, and ruined countless lives. I was a mentally ill 18-year-old kid. It took me numerous years to even realize the gravity of what I had done, even more to accept how many lives I affected. I took the life of someone's child, someone's sister, and someone's friend. It sickens me now to think that someone as loving and compassionate as myself had the ability to commit such a crime. Christa still sits on death row with her execution date scheduled for September 30th, 2026. In researching this episode, we relied on Christa Pike's recounting of the murder in court records, as well as the documentary Mean Girls, She-Devil, and various other news reports and articles. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Ritual Rewind. I'm looking to grow this podcast, so if you like it, please rate it and review it. If you're listening to this on YouTube, give it a like and a comment. And as always, you can interact with us at The Ritual Rewind on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.